The destruction of small landlords through government policy, I mean this is happening on purpose, is destroying or damaging or greatly reducing the potential for small painting decorating companies. I mean, it's a big deal and it hasn't been addressed. It's also affecting individual painters and decorators as well. I mean, there's loads about how we don't want landlords anymore. We don't want small landlords. We want people to own their own homes and all that kind of stuff. But there's nothing out there on how this change is really damaging small painters and decorators. I mean, it isn't being made up for by people having their own homes and hiring us directly. It's just not happening. So this is basically why that isn't happening, why the business is going to big landlords who aren't hiring small painters and decorators, and it just isn't happening like we expected. And this video addresses that. I haven't seen anything else out there that really explains the chain of events and the details. I hope you'll watch this. I hope you'll say what you think. I think this is a really important issue. So basically, it kind of started in 2000s when there were lots of issues with rogue landlords. I mean, people kind of knew often that they weren't going to get their deposit back. It was going to be very hard to get. They had to, when they were going to sort of move to their next property, when they were renting, this is for renters, that it'd be hard to get the money for their next deposit because their old landlord wouldn't cough up. I mean, just dodgy things like saying they damaged things that they hadn't. It was a big issue. So regulations sort of started to come in with sort of rental deposit schemes, and that was sort of seen as a good idea. Other things like sort of admin fees by estate agents and so on. It was seen as a good idea. And then in about 2010, people didn't want landlords because they thought, we can't buy our own home because the landlords are pushing up the prices of new homes and buying homes because they can afford to sort of spend lots of money. And as a result, people couldn't buy their own homes. And now the thinking in about 2016, 2017 onwards was that we didn't want small landlords, we just wanted big landlords. Small landlords don't behave properly, big landlords are better. So this three-thing double whammy has meant that the small landlord has kind of disappeared. I mean, they're still there, but compared to what it was when buy-to-let was a massive thing, if you speak to a lot of buy-to-let investors, they say it was a good thing, and now it isn't good to be a buy-to-let investor. It isn't good to sort of borrow money to do it and all the rest of it, because if you have a tenant and they don't pay, it takes a year or two to get them out. So how can I sort of have a buy-to-let if for 2 years or 1 year I won't have the money coming in? How do I pay the mortgage? And the bureaucracy and the regulation as well has meant that many people aren't doing it themselves. They have to sort of get an estate agent to look after it for them. That estate agent will take even more money. And the tax things as well. I mean, I'm not a tax expert at all and get your tax advice from somewhere else. But there used to be loads of tax breaks as well on the interest rates that you were paying and things like that. And that has all gone. And the idea was that to get rid of the landlords. But what has actually happened is that the small landlord has disappeared. The mum and pop landlord that has 1 or 2 flats. And what's taken over is the big landlord. So there's now landlords that like have 200 or 300 flats or 400 or at least more than 15, because if someone doesn't pay their bill, then they can cope because they've got others making up for it. And rents are going up as well because the landlords are factoring this in. If they've got sort of 5% of people or more who aren't paying the bill, then the other tenants are paying for it. So rental fees have gone up. And the bottom line, there's more bottom lines, but the bottom line here is that there aren't less people wanting to rent. More people need to rent, or as many as before, but it's just the landlords has changed from being small landlords to big landlords. And this is what is affecting painters and decorators. I used to have customers that were just sort of doing it themselves. They'd get me in to do their painting and decorating. But less and less now. And it's now also going through property management companies. And whereas there's sort of a big markup and all the rest of it for having a small painting and decorating business and speaking to the person who's a landlord and doing it for them directly, there's a bit less when you do it through a estate agent and things. Fair enough, they've got their costs as well and so on. But the big issue, and this is the big one that I haven't seen addressed anywhere else, it might be in other places, but I haven't seen it, is that the big landlords with like 300 properties, they've got loads and loads and loads. I mean, in areas where there's sort of new build, like let's say Wembley in London, there's these big companies where they build a whole block of flats. In Wimbledon, it's less so. It's just sort of happened that small landlords have pulled out and there's just a shortage of places to rent, and the big landlords haven't come in yet because the big landlords want the new block of flats that they can look after easily, and the old houses, sort of the Wimbledon old housing stock, the big landlords don't want so much. But it's still coming in, the big landlords are coming. The big landlords don't want to deal with a one-man band. They don't want to deal with a small company. They need an organisation or a supplier that can paint and decorate 300 flats. And that's about massive tendering. I mean, to tender for that is a big operation. It's a full-time job to sort of do the tendering quotes and so on. Also, the credit, it can be 90 days to get paid. I mean, what small one-man band or small company can deal with that? That's a totally different thing. It's about scaling management, it's about tendering and all the rest of it. So what's happened is the small painter and decorator that had a nice business with nice margins is basically becoming an employee now, or self-employed employee. And the small painting decorating companies are having a much harder time getting this work, and it's much smaller. And you might go, yeah, there's loads of business out there working for homeowners. Well, the middle classes now can less and less afford to have their own homes. That's dwindling. So actually, it's still going to the rental things, but it's just not the small landlord anymore. It's the big landlord. And the sort of the middle classes who own their own homes, they haven't got much money at the moment. So actually, you have to do the rental work because it's these landlords that have the money. So we're getting squeezed from both sides. We're getting squeezed by the homeowners not having much money, less homeowners because people can't afford to buy a home property, and also it's the big landlords as well, and they don't hire the small painting decorating companies. And it's not just painting and decorating, it comes from the whole gamut of people that supply landlords. So it could be plumbers, it could be all kinds of things. And even the small estate agent, well, they sort of depend on the small landlords to a degree. And the big landlords and the big block of flats, they're doing it themselves. So it's just a different game. They'll go for the big estate agents. They don't go to the independents so much. Now, I'd love to know your thoughts. I do this to learn. You might think I'm totally wrong, that what I'm seeing is maybe a niche thing, or I'm just not right. Please do say your thoughts. Please do subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you again soon.